Hi, I'm Xenowave, and in this video, I'm going to explain what additive synthesis is and how you can use it. So what is additive synthesis? Additive synthesis is the summation and manipulation of sine waves. Additive synthesis works by manipulating the frequency, phase, or amplitude of some set of partials in a sound. This deep level of control over potentially every partial allows you to make sounds with precise and complex movement. A few synthesizers that specialize in additive synthesis are Harmor, Razor, Arturia Pigments, Morphine, and Alchemy. A few synthesizers that don't specialize in additive synthesis but still have additive capabilities and features include Sytrus, Serum, Vital, and PhasePlant. There are many ways to use additive synthesis, but I'll only go over a few. The first one being sound recreation. So I made a piano sound in Harmor, and here's what it sounds like. It's not perfect, but it should be enough to get the concept across. So the first thing I did to recreate this sound was I loaded up a piano sound, in this case the Stage Grand preset in Flex, and I just kept on playing C, and I analyzed the harmonics. Eventually, it got so tedious, I just took a screenshot and went from there. So the next thing I did was mess with the timbre 1 harmonic level in Harmor, and I tried my best to copy the timbre I saw in Span that Flex generated. So let's try and make a comparison. Versus. So in this graph here, the x-axis is the harmonic you're on, and the y-axis is the amplitude of that harmonic. So I just tried to copy the harmonics one by one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way until harmonic 22. After I was happy with the timbre of the sound, I went to the effects and turned on reverb. And I just set the settings to my taste. Here's what it sounds like without it, actually. It's more like an electric piano, and I think it's pretty funny how much of a difference reverb makes. After the reverb, I went and turned on the hill low pass and set the frequency to taste. And on top of that, I use keyboard mapping to make the higher notes have less harmonics and the lower notes have more harmonics. And I have velocity mapping so that quieter notes have less harmonics and louder notes have more harmonics. If you think about when you play a piano and you play it softly, you don't hear as many harmonics as you would if you played it loudly. And if you play bass notes on a piano, just due to the nature of the instrument itself, it's going to have more harmonics. But also if you play it softer still, you'll hear less. So that's what I was trying to replicate with the keyboard and velocity mapping. Quick side note, when you're synthesizing something and you try to make it sound as real as possible by using the physics and mechanisms of how the instrument works, that's called physical modeling synthesis. There are synthesizers that are dedicated to general physical modeling and others that are dedicated to physically modeling pianos or string instruments, you name it. It's just something I figured that's worth mentioning. In oscillator B, I attempt to recreate the hammer strike that occurs when someone presses the key on the piano. So here's what it sounds like by itself. and in context. And here's what it sounds like without it. The first thing I did for this sound was set the prism amount to positive 100% on multiply mode. And what the prism knob does is it shifts the original position of the partials away from the fundamental frequency, which generates a very inharmonic sound. Next, I set the pitch envelope to start at the default pitch and shoot down however many octaves, 5 octaves. And that's what generates the attack sound. So let's play it actually. If I take it off, we're going to hear some more tonality. Next, I set the low pass to be 50% for filter 1. And on top of that, I set a little envelope so that it starts off with some high frequencies, but then goes to default. So let's try and listen to the difference. Next, in the volume envelope, I just have this shape so that it comes in and immediately shuts off smoothly. Because if I don't have this, it'll sound like this. And finally, on the local EQ, I have it set like this, which is basically a high pass filter, because when I was making a sound, it sounded like this. I wanted to get rid of some of those lows, so I had this shape right here. So that's a small taste of what additive synthesis can do when it comes to sound recreation. Another way to use additive synthesis is to use resynthesis. Resynthesis is when a synth takes an audio and recreates it using its additive engine. Image resynthesis is when a synth takes in an image and converts it to audio using its additive engine. So let's drag our audio clip into Harmor. And if we zoom in, we'll see that this is just a spectrogram. So we have our partials right here over time. And we can do really cool things with it. But first, I can't stress this enough. This is a wave file that's playing whenever I play through the sampler. But when I play through Harmor, it's playing natively, which means I can use any feature in Harmor to edit or change the sound. So for example, if I want to use Harmor's phaser on this sound, I totally can. And I can just go crazy with that. I can mess with these settings over here. I can mess with the prism. And with just those few changes, the sound is totally different. Though, if I were actually sound designing for this for a song, I would actually just do something like this and maybe put on a little unison. And just mess with other features in Harmor. There's effects, but you could do post-processing as well. It doesn't really matter here. Well, I mean, there's a distortion, but it's already a pretty distorted sound. You get the idea. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so now I'm going to resample the audio I used to demonstrate compression in the previous video.
House music.
I'm just going to mess with this audio now.
House music, 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 house music.
I'm thinking this could be a little louder, but I don't want to. Okay. It stops becoming a human voice and it becomes whatever this is. And if I really slow it down, it can become some ambience. Add in my reverb. Let's go crazy. That's like ambience for like some dark game. I don't know. But that's the power of resynthesizing sounds. By the way, when I put the mix on timbre 2, which is a square wave, it means that the resynthesized sound is only playing the odd harmonics because that's what forms a square wave. If I put it back on the saw wave, it'll play all the harmonics in the resynthesized sample. So I put this image of Harmor into Harmor because why not? Image resynthesis can be pretty unpredictable, but basically how it works is brightness determines how loud a partial is, and the height of the pixel determines which partial it will be, whether it's the first, second, 100th, or 512th. So whenever it's pitch black, it will be silence, and whenever it's hex FFF, it will be the loudest. So that's how it works. So let's listen to this. So that's a small taste of audio and image resynthesis. A cool way to use additive synthesis is to generate unique timbres, and what I mean by that is to use the unique features that come with your additive synthesizer. For example, Morphine allows you to draw up to 128 harmonics. It doesn't sound too amazing at first, but what's so special about Morphine is that you can make these things called breakpoints. And in these breakpoints, you can form more timbres, and you can make as many breakpoints as you'd like. Then, when you play the sound, Morphine will morph between all of the breakpoints in this sequence. So I'm just going to make a few more. And when I play the sound, we'll get something like this. And I can control how fast the morphing goes with this rate knob right here. The way the sound morphs is through a method called crossfading. So a crossfade is when one sound's volume fades in while another sound's volume fades out. It's a simple concept, but it's extremely effective. Morphing allows us to change the amplitude, panning, detune, velocity, and window of our partials, though I don't know what window means in this context. Anyways, I'm going to focus on the detune, which is just when sounds are off pitch by a small amount. So it allows us to change the tuning of every harmonic per breakpoint. So I could have these first however many harmonics 11 harmonics detuned up, and in the next one I could have it detuned down, and I could just do whatever I want, and that will generate an even more unique sound. And the more I mess with it, the more unique it will be. Another cool thing about Morphine is that you can bounce these breakpoints between each other with these walls right here. So now I have the loop on ping pong, and it's just going to bounce between these. And I'm just going to keep on messing with this sound. Alright, so after messing with this patch, I got this sound. I brought it down a few octaves, and I just did more random scribbling for detune and amplitude. Actually, hold on. And there's a sound you can use for whatever you want. So again, the main idea behind generating unique timbres is to use what makes your additive synthesizer special. So in this case, Morphine has the morphing feature. It also has other features like being able to morph between the 4 generators rather than just a generator morphing between its own breakpoints. It also has Resynthesis and just other features that make Morphine Morphine. Harmor has unique features like customizable filters, customizable resonances, a fully customizable phaser, this whole prism section. I can't think of any other synth that has this feature, and it's so sweet. The harmonizer, you name it. Not to mention the resynthesis and these features. The list goes on and on. On top of that, every feature in Harmor is based off of its additive engine. For example, this is the main reason why we can customize filters in Harmor. So in our custom filter shape, let's just think of this as it's a filter shape, right? So that means that this would be a high pass, a very gentle one. This would be a very gentle low pass. Let's play around with it actually. Very soft. If we want to make it extremely steep, this would be the steepest low pass I've ever heard. And vice versa, steepest high pass. Harmor is able to do this because the filter shapes just control the level of the partials of whatever timbre is playing. And that's why Harmor's filters have no phase issues and sound really clean. So just keep in mind that pretty much every additive synthesizer has some way of leveraging its own additive engine to do whatever cool thing it wants. A cool approach to using additive synthesis is to control each partial individually. I feel like PhasePlant is the best synth to demonstrate this. So what I did was make a 16 harmonic additive engine in PhasePlant. So in group 1, I just kept on adding on analog generators, and for each one I would just make the harmonic the next harmonic. So the first one is the first harmonic, and then harmonic 2, 3, 4, all the way to 16. And for each one I would make their route to the level of group 1 or harmonic 1. Even though PhasePlant doesn't specialize in additive synthesis, I figured it'd be a fun challenge to try and recreate Harmor's Prism knob in PhasePlant. Because the way I understand it, Prism is all about harmonics moving away from the fundamental or away from their spot as a harmonic. So here's what it sounds like. What I did to get this sound was route the shift of these partials to macro 1. I made harmonics 2 through 8 go up in pitch, and I made the rest go down in pitch. I couldn't do harmonic 16 because macros can only modulate 14 things at a time. In this synth, I built a square wave across 3 different oscillators. The first oscillator has the lower harmonics, the second one has the middle harmonics, and the third one has the rest, the highs. So here's what they sound like on their own. And all together. It doesn't seem special at first, but watch what happens when I start to modulate these 3 oscillators with some sine waves. And even better, watch what happens when I detune my modulators a little bit. I'm just individually affecting these oscillators with simple modulation. And I can't do that without additive synthesis. Also, don't worry too much about this matrix stuff. I'll explain that in a few videos. But yeah, additive synthesis allows you to have deep control over your timbres, especially when used in conjunction with other types of synthesis. The best way I can think of to incorporate additive synthesis into your sound design is to replace the basic shapes with whatever custom waveform you draw. Here's our sound we made in the last video, and what I'm going to do is draw in my own waveform. And to do that, I'm going to click on this pencil icon, which brings us to our harmonic editor. This top window holds the harmonics of our waveform, and the bottom window holds the phases of our harmonics. And on top of that, if we click on this gear, we have the power scale and the amplitude scale. Right now we're in power scale. But if we click on amplitude, it looks like what we would see in Sytrus. Now I'm going to get rid of every harmonic past the fundamental and just draw my waveform from there. There we go. There we go. All right. Oh, hold on. Delay. All right. Just by drawing in these harmonics, I have a totally different sound from the saw wave I had before. Let's see what happens when we apply additive synthesis to bass. So I have our regular saw wave right here. And I'm just going to subtract some harmonics and mess with the phases as well. And at that point, it just stops being a saw wave and it becomes something totally original that you can then process into other bass sounds or use as is, so on and so forth. Making sub-bass or 808s with additive synthesis is very easy. This sound right here is an 808. And all I did was have this decay shape on my volume envelope and have a much faster decay on this pitch envelope. The pitch is for that thumping effect. If I turn it off, and if I increase the range of my pitch envelope, we'll hear more of it. And the volume is just for the overall decay. If I don't want to be an 808, then I just turn off the volume envelope. No biggie. And as for the harmonics, I love to take a square wave and take like the first 3 harmonics and go from there. You're pretty much always going to get something useful. The biggest thing here, in my opinion, is the 3rd harmonic. Without it, you lose a lot of the power. You still have the fundamental, but I feel like the 3rd harmonic it completes the sound. Additive synthesis is a very good way to make reese bases. A reese base is when you take 2 harmonically rich waveforms, detune them, and distort them. So let's take 2 saw waves, offset the pitch of one of them by some amount, and distort them. My distortion's already on. So that's what a basic reese base sounds like. However, if we make these saw waves additively, like so, and we adjust the phases of our harmonics and our overall harmonic distribution, we can get some pretty gnarly sounds. Let's see what this sounds like. That's a very bitey timbre because of all of these upper harmonics. If I want it to be a bit more deep, I can bring this down, get more lower harmonics, and let's get something like this. And keep in mind, the phases of the lower harmonics will have a much more drastic effect than the phases of the upper harmonics. So if I just randomly do that, we're not going to even see much of a change in the waveform itself. The difference is there, but it's not as drastic as messing with. I'm going to make the same type of sound in Serum just to kind of try and get the point across, because the main concept is that if you have this harmonic editor and 2 oscillators and some distortion, you should be able to get a similar type of movement and sound. So I'm going to mess with the saw wave again. Oh, I got to turn on oscillator. Oscillator B. I'm going to mess with this. I'm going to offset the pitch. Turn on distortion. That's all I have to say for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have an awesome day.